Well, friends, it looks like accountability is catching up to Pam Bondi. A compelling complaint was just filed with the Florida State Bar detailing a mountain of unethical conduct by Bondi while she was serving as Attorney General. Let's talk about that.
Of law enforcement.
Well, Congressman Meadows is a big fan of yours, that I can tell you. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Thank you, sir.
He's a good man.
I've been very impressed, Mr. President, with a lot of the ideas I've heard just since before you came in, actually, and I do think mental health is a serious issue. It's affecting us across the nation. I know it is in North Carolina. I appreciate your courage, sir, to talk about the fact that I do think there is a place for properly trained people in certain areas as well. I think multi-layered, like an onion, security's got a lot of facets, and I believe that you've got certainly the courage and leadership to bring all of this together. I know there's a lot of good ideas out there. I think they all need to be listened to, but it's going to take a lot of courage on the part of leaders, I think, in this nation to bring the community together to help them do the things.
Because just
really want to do in their heart, but maybe haven't had the courage to do yet. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sheriff. It's going to take a lot of political courage, you're right.
Yes, sir.
A lot of political courage. Some of it won't be politically correct, but time for political correctness is over. We have to... Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Charles McDonald, Mr. President.
this matters.
For your support, certainly for all the sheriffs in North Carolina, if not all of law.
Right?
Thank you, sir.
He's a good man.
Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, accountability has come for so many Trump lawyers. I mean, so many of them have been sanctioned and or disbarred. Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Kenneth Chesbrough, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, and others. So now, friends, the question is, will Pam Bondi soon become a member of the Donald Trump Disbarred Lawyers Club? It's sure starting to look that way. Let's start with the new reporting. This from Courthouse News. Legal groups file new ethics complaint against Pam Bondi. Fresh accusations of ethical malfeasance against Bondi come as the former Attorney General is set to meet with House lawmakers about her handling of the Epstein files. And that article begins, a coalition of legal groups, judges, and attorneys on Wednesday refiled a formal ethics complaint against former Attorney General Pam Bondi, accusing her of serious professional misconduct in her leadership of the Justice Department and handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The new complaint comes months after the Florida bar declined to examine an initial set of ethics charges against Bondi, and days before House lawmakers are set to grill the former Trump administration official on her role in publishing the Epstein documents. That issue formed a central pillar of the ethics accusations levied against Bondi on Wednesday by the legal groups, which included Lawyers Defending American Democracy, Democracy Defenders Fund, and Lawyers for the Rule of Law. The advocates, joined by more than 120 retired judges, law professors, and attorneys, accused the former Attorney General of botching the Epstein files publication and inadvertently releasing the personal information of dozens of victims. Quote, the Department of Justice's release, redaction, withholding, and messaging relating to the Epstein files, which Ms. Bondi both participated in directly and oversaw as Attorney General, has been fundamentally flawed from the beginning. The legal groups say in the complaint.
We're tired of it. And
The legal groups argued that Bondi had violated the Florida.
We're tired of it. And, why does the black man always have to die? Why they can't just be arrested?
Rules of professional conduct by misleading the public about the scope and depth of the government's Epstein documents. They pointed to statements she made shortly after President Trump's inauguration, claiming she had a client list of Epstein's associates on her desk and ready for publication. The Justice Department later said no such list existed. The advocacy groups also contended that Bondi's handling of the Epstein documents violated the letter of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bipartisan measure passed by Congress last year and signed by Trump, directing the Justice Department to publish all its files on the late finance.
An article about architecture in the social distancing world. Interesting.
And convicted sex criminal. They claimed the former Attorney General showed reckless disregard for the law and that she failed to ensure Justice Department attorneys had properly redacted sensitive information in the files the agency released. In addition to violating the law, the legal groups contended Bondi's approach to the Epstein files release demonstrated a shocking lack of competence. Quote, Ms. Bondi was in control of the sensitive and private information of dozens of victims and under a legal obligation to maintain those confidences, they wrote. Her failure to take adequate precautions to prevent the release of such information, even after being warned by outside counsel about prior reckless disclosures, can only be considered reckless and prejudicial to the administration of justice. The advocacy groups also accused the former Attorney General of violating state bar guidelines in her handling of the Justice Department's reported violation of more than 100 court orders in immigration detention cases. They pointed to her oversight of what they call politicized prosecutions against Trump foes, such as New York Attorney General Letitia James, former FBI Director James Comey, and outgoing Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. The complaint argued that Bondi launched criminal investigations and prosecutions against those figures and others despite lacking probable cause. That, my friends, is a parade of unethical horribles. Wrongfully and actually unlawfully revealing the identities of, outing Epstein's victims, re-victimizing them in the process, putting their safety at risk. I mean, does Pam Bondi feel like the Epstein victims haven't suffered enough? Okay, how about Pam Bondi criminally investigating Donald Trump's perceived enemies without adequate evidence? No probable cause that they had committed any crime. Let me put a finer point on that. That is Pam Bondi prosecuting the innocent. Then there's ignoring, violating more than 100 court orders in immigration cases. And on and on and on. Accountability must come for Pam Bondi. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.
let me start with a place that honestly doesn't feel like the place that I should be starting, but I just have to. I realized this morning that, I get, I wake up and I instantly look through the news. And I realized this morning that, somebody asked me last night, said I should write a letter for literally saying to the people of the future for whom I write, this is what it looks like today. But I got up this morning and I took a look at the news and I took a look at the aerial photographs of the White House. And it just hit me that in this moment, in this week, we are looking at the cover of 1 million books written about the Trump era in the future and 1 million documentary films. Because if you look at an aerial view of the White House right now, compared to what the White House looked like a year, when Biden was in office, in place of the Rose Garden, the world famous Rose Garden, which was small, and I got to see it. I've been to see it. It was small and it was sort of intimate. And in place of that now, that's been paved over to look like one of the patios at Mar-a-Lago. So the Rose Garden is gone. Now you got this sort of patio that looks, as somebody said, like a Panera. And then the east wing of the White House is gone. It's rubble. It's a construction site. It looks just like it's like a hellscape because it was all torn down. And now on the south lawn of the White House, that sweeping expanse in front of the White House, there is a giant Ultimate Fighting Championship or UFC arena being built for the cage matches that Trump has scheduled for his birthday, his 80th birthday, June 14th. So you've gone from this image of the White House that was really very traditional, the blue, the green lawn and the roses and the original piece of the building that had been added onto and so on. The East Wing to a paved section, debris and construction, and an Ultimate Fighting Championship cage match arena to seat 5,000 people on the front of the South Lawn. And you just look at it and you think, like the historians whose great grandparents aren't born yet are going to look back at that image and they're going to say, well, I got to have that be the cover of my book, because as a symbol of what the Trump administration has done to the American government, it's just so extraordinarily on the nose. It just really is. And the way the cage match is done, it's set to have sort of this bow over it so that the White House will be framed by it for the television cameras. So that, in the scheme of many of the things that are in front of us right now, is, the least in some ways of our worries. I mean, I care deeply, deeply about the historic buildings of this country, but I care more about the people who are in concentration camps.
Right?
Thank you, sir.
He's a good man.
I've been very impressed, Mr. President, with a lot of the ideas I've heard just since before you came in, actually, and I do think
a former U.S. Justice Department attorney, Carmen Lindberger, is
on the scheme of things, as much as it hurts to see what's happening in the White House, it doesn't hurt nearly
Since before you came in, actually, and I do think
as badly as seeing what's happening to people in American concentration camps, but it still jumps out at you, right? So let's start with that, because there's a lot going on there. And then, of course, once I thought of that, I'm like, oh, then I gotta play it out. But so I think one of the things that's happening, and this has been happening throughout Trump's second term, is he is failing mentally. I mean, this a gazillion times, it's like obvious at this point to everybody, right? Even though it's not getting much traction in the media. But one of the things that he has done in his second term, and that I think his advisors have encouraged, is that he has spent more and more time essentially being a real estate guy. But his real estate is now the property of the federal government. So we're getting the destruction of the Ben Shahn murals. I'll throw that one out there as well. But we're getting the destruction of the Kennedy Center and the extraordinary experiment for whatever is going on there in the reflecting pool in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And now the threat to build a triumphal arch, although what exactly we're triumphing over is unclear to me. A triumphal arch there on the Virginia side of the bridge between Arlington National Cemetery and the Lincoln Memorial. And by the way, I wrote about that a few days ago, and a bunch of people were like, well, how do you know what that arch is going to frame? The New York Times, which is linked in that piece,
those roles. America does.
This former DOJ employee is the type of person that James Comey was addressing there, Jordan, trying to say, just wait 2 more years and we can change everything that this administration has done to our DOJ and FBI. In reality, as you mentioned, this was an attorney. This was a managing assistant.
As interactive article where you can actually see a rendering and a 3D image of what that arch is going to be. And it's pretty clear that it does, in fact, frame Arlington House. And there's another rabbit hole I truly love to go into. When all this is over, I'm just gonna I don't know, write a book or do a video series called Rabbit Holes, because the story of Arlington House and the people who lived in Arlington House is the most interesting story ever in terms of anything that I would like to write about. And so maybe I'll write that book. Anyway, it's not just the Lee family by a long shot. Look it up. All right. So he's turned to this idea of basically his happy place. He's gone back to being a real estate guy. And yet what we are seeing is the destruction of the American government at the whims of this man who's not bothering at all to pay attention to anything legal about the ways such renovations should be doing, but also, of course, has acted as if we don't have a constitution. He hasn't just broken the Constitution. He has acted as if we don't have one. And that's a little bit of a different thing, because if we don't have one at all, that suggests we have the space for the rise of an authoritarian dictator. And, I've talked before a lot about how the idea for this, it comes from a political scientist who becomes beloved of the Nazis, and the ways in which the Trump administration has worked through emergency declarations the same way that philosopher said would be a good way to get rid of a constitution and put someone in power. And then a lot of the people around Trump believe in that system, or at least have emphasized it in a number of writings and so on. But so while he has destroyed the actual physical building of the White House and the spaces that are beloved of the American people in the US Capitol, he has also been acting as if we don't have a constitution, and that what he's putting in his place is this idea of a strong man, and he is obviously going to be the strong man. But the other piece of it that I think is interesting is the worse things go for him politically, the more he is doubling down on things like that reflecting pool and the bright blue of the reflecting pool, or the ballroom that he keeps talking about, and so on. So there is also this, almost like it really is his happy place. You go back to the place where you're comfortable when you're under stress. And that, I don't know where your happy place is. Mine is a specific library. But, if you're really, really stressed out, there are places where you're happy. And it feels like he is going back to this deeper and deeper, because this is a place where he feels happy. And that says something about what else is going on in the country. So one of the things to be watching right now, of course, is Iran and what Trump has done with Iran. And I'm not going to rehearse where we have been with that, because I've talked about it almost every time I've come on this webcast.
You mentioned
since he and Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel began to bomb Iran on February 2028. But the bottom line at this point is Trump doesn't have a way out, and the pressure is building. And what I mean by not having a way out is this. Right now, Iran essentially is holding the upper hand, or as Trump would say, the cards, because although the Israelis and the US forces have inflicted enormous damage on Iran, Iran has managed to get control and to keep control over the Strait of Hormuz